welcome to the Sports Junkies. I'm Alex Simon. I'm here with Ben, Dave, Thomas, and John. And what a fantastic baseball postseason, I gotta say. We have finally been able to catch our breath a little bit after those phenomenal playoff games. Game 6 in the World Series, you'll never see another game like it. But now we gotta look forward. We got the offseason coming up, and there's a lot of discussion in baseball about some pretty key changes that could happen. And as a baseball purist, I'm looking around at the table here, some people would not like it. The big one right now, in baseball right now, there's an 18 playoff system, 3 division winners, and 1 wildcard team in each side. Bud Selig has proposed adding another wildcard team to each division, to each league rather. So you have 10 teams making the postseason total, 5 in each league, where the 2 wildcard teams that make it would face off in either a 1-game playoff, which right now is more likely than the second option, which is a 3-game playoff where you play 1 game at the team with the worst record, then travel and play the next 2 at the team with the better record. I don't know about you, but I'm going to start with Thomas. Thomas, what do you think about this idea?
Well, obviously, you can look at it 2 ways. It's fun. On the one hand, it's fun to have another playoff team because you get, you get another city which is going to make money with the playoff games and more excitement because there's an extra team. Your team still has a chance to make that second wildcard team when in past years you're done. But now you still have a shot. So that creates that definitely increases the excitement. So in that sense, I definitely like the idea to start with. I like the idea of possibly adding another wildcard team. But you mentioned being a baseball purist. My only concern on that would be how much more do you want to downgrade the regular season? Because, it used to be, before divisional play started, the regular season was so important because you won the regular season, you got to the World Series. Then divisional play, fine. There was one where the regular season was still important because you were in a team, you were in a division with like 8, 10 other teams. You still had to win that. You still had to beat those 10 teams and then beat another team in the playoffs. So the regular season was still very important. With each extra round, the season, of course, is still fun and we all love it. But in terms of postseason, it becomes a little less important every time you add an extra team making the postseason. So I like the idea generally, but I am worried about how much more watered down can they make an already long season. It's under 62 games. I love that it's that long, but how less important do you want to make the season? That'd be my only concern.
Yeah, no, definitely. Obviously the main reason they're trying to do this is to keep more teams in the playoff race.
Period.
Well, I wouldn't say that's the only reason. I think the reason really Major League Baseball is doing it is it's more money in their pocket.
Yeah. That goes along with keeping more teams in the race.
I'm just making sure we're on the same page.
Not the only reason, but one of the reasons. But the end of this season, the 2011 season, was so amazing. And I think baseball will see that and see all these divisions and teams coming down to the wire, and they'll think that adding more teams to the playoffs will create more of that. And I think the reason why this year was so cool and amazing was because that doesn't always happen. Yeah. Sometimes it comes down to the last day and there's really maybe 1 game that matters. But to have all those games that matter and have them be such great games, if you have that every year where multiple teams have a chance to make the playoffs, you're kind of diluting the product a little bit. We'll see.
Well, let me just throw this idea at you quickly. When this idea really got heated up was very end of August. The Red Sox and the Braves were both over 9 games ahead in the wild card, whereas the teams in second and third in the wild card, had there been a second spot, the Giants and Cardinals were only a half game separate for that second spot, and the Rays and the Angels were tied. And people were thinking, hey, in a year like this with the first wild card already set, there's not going to be a playoff race at the end. But then all of a sudden, the 2 teams that were ahead of the Braves and the Red Sox fall, the Rays and the Cardinals rise up, and then that 1 playoff spot became an issue. Became a race. And you look at the year before in the wild card, in 2010, the Red Sox ran away with it. Excuse me, not the Red Sox, the Rays ran away with it, whereas the Red Sox were 6.5 games behind at the end of the 2010 season, yet they were only leading in the end by 1 game over the 3rd place team in the White Sox. That would have been a race, whereas in the National League, it was a little more of a race. I believe it was the Braves getting it. they didn't get the wild card until the last week. But again, what would happen if you added the second team? You have more races, sure, but then, you know, you wouldn't get the kind of race that you had this year, whereas this year, had there been 2 teams, the Cardinals and the Rays would have ran away with it towards the end and just never, and by the last week in that last series on those Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you wouldn't have been able to, they wouldn't have mattered.
Although that's another, oh, go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
You have a comment on that, Ben? Because it seemed like you were looking at.
Dave, throw it to Ben.
If you got something, go ahead.
No, okay, this is my point. My point is this. I think just the wild card, I think that this is one team should be enough. You know, like, you have the divisional winners, and then you have the wild card. Hey, if there's 2 wild card teams that are tied, I think if it was Atlanta and St. Louis tied, they would have that 1-game playoff, I believe, to clinch the wild card. And now you're going to have an extra wild card, and then they got to play in 1 or 3 games. 3 games, I think, is just too much in itself. You know, I just feel like you were saying, you know, it's just more the teams that make the playoffs end up earning it. And look at St. Louis, the team that, you know, they were pretty much out of it, and then they had a big stretch and knocked Atlanta. And I thought Atlanta was going to be in the playoffs easily, as well as Boston.
Oh yeah.
You know, so it would degrade that. It would be something like, well, okay, Atlanta is going to make it, and they're going to play St. Louis, and then, you know, like, it's just, you know, in the end, the teams that make the playoffs deserve it. Yeah, it would have been nice, like you said, the Giants probably would have been in it to the last few games of the season. You know, that would be cool if they would have got the extra slot if there was one this year. But in the end, the best teams end up making it, and then, you know, it leads itself.
Well, see, and you just mentioned, oh, well, the Giants would have been in it, and that's all. That's another thing for adding another wild card. If you think about it, is that baseball fans, networks, ESPN, they love to have these what-if discussions. Just like, you know, Giants fans. For the '93 season, if we'd had the wild card round then,
that's why there's a wild card.
That's not the only reason, but yeah, if there had been a wild card, see, it came the next year. If there had been a wild card in '93, the Giants-Braves race doesn't happen because the Giants, the Braves would have won the division, but the Giants would have won the wild card.
But then think of it in the other way, of the sense is that you wouldn't have had that magic that there was right there.
Right.
You wouldn't have had, you know, fans literally on their hands and knees, you know, literally not able to function unless they watch the game.
It opens discussion points.
I mean,
there's another.
I mean, think of it this way. I think if anything were to happen, you don't expand the playoffs right now because you have good balance. You don't really want over a third of your teams in the playoffs on a need be necessary. I think if Major League Baseball does want to add more teams, I think the best way to do it is, you know, they're actually, out of all the leagues other than the NFL, they're the most thriving sports league in the world. But, you know, I would put the NFL at the same level, except it's kind of knocked off based off of what happened with the lock-off. And right now, with how phenomenal the playoffs have been and how great the regular season ended, I think baseball really, if they were to ever expand to 32, and then you have 4 divisions of 4, you can adopt the NFL playoff schedule and kind of go that route. But that would be the only type of expansion that I could see. Now, again, I can understand why Major League Baseball, especially as a business, wants to do this.
Right.
More money, more intrigue. You don't have
more
teams.
Interest.
Right, more interest. There's more cities that are still involved. Everybody's on there. There's more people literally watching the last few games with an entire, you know, my team still has a chance, or my team's going on. And that's why they want to do this. But I'm going to go around the table and start with you, John. What is your final opinion on this? Would you, especially let's say if it happens in 2013, will you be okay if Major League Baseball stays at 30 teams and has 10 teams in the playoffs?
I like the system they have right now. I think it's perfect for the amount of teams in the leagues and whatnot. If they were going to do something different, I like the idea you just talked about, having 4-team divisions, doing an NFL-style playoff system. The reason I like that is because it benefits the teams with the best records. They get that first-round bye. When the new thing they're proposing with adding 1 more team, it doesn't benefit the teams that had good seasons. It only benefits the team that had the worst season that got into the playoffs. So,
well, at the same time, it doesn't necessarily. It does benefit, let's say, you know, there was in 2010, the Rangers and the Yankees and the Rays both ran away, and they were, you know, they both kind of gave up at the end of the year, even though they were battling for a wild card and AL East spot. Yeah. The Rays ended up winning the AL East, whereas if this was a possibility, all of a sudden you have to fight very close to the edge, because if you do lose
you're in that game.
AL East, all of a sudden now you could go from being the second best team in the baseball to
Being
having
one
to
and
play a
done.
wild card game, and if you lose that wild card game, you're gone.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what makes it a little more intriguing, I guess you could say, is that it makes the division races matter a little bit more.
Yeah.
But at the same time, why mess with something that's working perfect right now?
I think it works perfect right now.
Ben?
Well, I've got a. Dave says 2 seconds. That's the way the last
No, it's
segment.
not.
I'll time him.
No, I have my own proposal sort of based on this idea that I kind of just came up with, and there might be a caveat I'm missing, but what sounds good to me is to have this sort of thing where out of the 3 divisions, the 2 teams whose division winners have the best records out of the 3 go on, and then you pick the 2 with the best records besides that. And that way you could avoid these situations where the 3rd best team in the AL East is probably the 3rd best team in the American League and they never make it.
So you're saying that you basically are going to want to take the top 4 teams in either league, doesn't matter where their divisions are.
Yeah, you could either go top 4 altogether, or you could still. I mean, what this is a sort of best of both worlds, where
take 2 division winners at most.
Right, because
or at least,
if your team goes 500, I don't really think you deserve to make the playoffs, even if you win your division.
We're actually going to get to a point very similar to that in about 2 minutes, but let me give Dave and Thomas a chance.
I'll keep it simple. Just one wild card team is enough. I like the way it is, as is, and anything more, like you said, it's all business. And maybe I'm old school. I mean, I remember it was just like 2 teams, battling out for the World Series. Now you have all this divisional stuff. So the way it is now, one wild card team's enough.
Okay, Thomas, you're on the clock.
Okay, thank you. No, I think you got it. I like it the way it is. I mean, I'd be okay as a trial run because I don't like to say, that's it, this is my pick. I like to see how things work out, and I think that's what baseball is going to do. But as of now, I like it the way it is. But let's see what happens with the second wild card team because that's obviously they're going to do it. But I think I like it the way it is now. But just give it a trial run and see if it works. I just don't, like I said earlier, the way it is now, the regular season still means something. And what Alex was saying earlier, I think, is that, the end of the season would matter a lot. If you're running away, all of a sudden there's the second, third team coming up on you at the end. So the end of the regular season matters a lot more, and maybe that's when more people watch anyway, is at the end, when we get into a playoff time. But, I'm just worried about diluting the regular season more than it already is. Because you don't want to get you don't want to get the NBA, where half the teams make the playoffs anyway. So, the regular season is like, okay, whatever, let's wait till playoff time and see if our team is close. Because half the teams make it anyway.
Except for the Warriors.
Except the Warriors, well, yeah, they're the other half.
So, you actually, Ben, just made a very intriguing point.
You liked it?
Well, it leads perfectly into the other thing baseball is that's proposing radically. So,
Realignment.
Major League Baseball, right now, there are 16 teams in the National League, 14 in the American League. They're considering, because they don't want any interleague contests, so they want an even number of teams so that the leagues can stay within themselves. But what they're considering doing is moving the Houston Astros, who are right now in the NL Central, over from the NL Central to the American League, and not even really caring about divisions. The idea, even though you'd think they'd just go 3 divisions of 5 in each league, the main idea within baseball, now, people think the division thing, but what baseball really wants is to totally eliminate the divisions whatsoever. Get rid of divisions, all of a sudden, everything's in the league. You have teams that you're going to focus on playing because they don't want you to travel, 12 times a year to New York, but you'll focus on your side. But the top 4 teams in each division, no matter where they are, what division they were in, what division who they played all year, the top 4 teams with the best record in each league go to the playoffs, or 5, depending on if they do this wild card thing.
Right.
This is really radical. And unless they went, if they expanded, you could see it more so where they just went 4 divisions of 4 instead, so they had 16 and were symmetrical all around. But having 15, one team would have to play a team from the other league every single night that you had baseball. There would always be an interleague game, always be an interleague series going on. That's what makes it so radical. Ben, you want to start?
I think that really, to use an expression I heard earlier, dilutes. No, it's the perfect word for it. It dilutes, the great thing about having the differences between the American and National Leagues be so distinct. The DH, I mean, you base your team around not having a DH or not. You have that you know, that guy that you feel comfortable just having in there as a DH in the AL, and it doesn't work in the NL. So to have those teams playing each other, I mean, it's going to completely shift the way the teams put their lineups together. I mean, I think that would probably play into the AL's hand a little bit more at first. But, yeah, I don't really like it. I mean, to begin with, I'm not a huge fan of the DH. And I don't think that having this realignment that way would work in that favor. I'm just not a huge fan of the DH, and I don't want to see things go anymore in that way.
I don't think they necessarily get rid of the DH. I mean, I don't think that's ever going to happen.
That's what I'm saying is I don't think National League teams should have to
either.
cater to the DH any more than they already do.
Okay, you're saying with the Interleague. Okay.
Yeah, no more Interleague games. It's already bad enough.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, not. Yeah, it's a good. It seems like a good idea. I can see why they talk about that, but to actually implement it, I'm kind of turned off as well. I like the American National League, but I do agree with the Interleague. Maybe they got to cut that out, or maybe just reduce it or something like that. I would definitely agree with that, and just have the teams play against each other more in each league.
Well, maybe what they could do is instead of because I don't think realistically, I mean, it generates a lot of interest. People love it. They go nuts about it on ESPN. Interleague play has been a success, I think, for the most part. Since Bug Selig introduced it, I don't think interleague play realistically is going to completely go away. But maybe, what you were saying about, you guys were saying about focusing on the teams you got to play. Maybe they could go back. Maybe if they, with realignment, maybe they could go back to a balanced schedule. Like before they switched it through, they used to have it when the four of us were growing up. They used to have it where you'd make 2 trips to New York, and they'd come here twice, and we'd go. We'd have 2 East Coast trips, and they'd come here twice. Same thing. You play. Basically, you played almost the same amount of games against every team in the league. Maybe you played a little more against your own division, but most of the time it was pretty equal. And I liked it when you went to, playing the division more, because that shows, you're the true division champ. You beat your division. But I think if they're going to do if they're, they're not going to kill off wild card interleague play. But I'd be in favor of maybe if you're going to do something radical like that, maybe go back to a more balanced schedule instead of getting rid of the interleague play, because that's not going to happen realistically.
How's that song go? Maybe go back.
Please don't say that.
I think if you're not going to have divisions, you'd have to have a balanced schedule. I totally agree with Thomas on that one. But I'm kind of a purist. I like the National League. I would like them to get rid of the. It's not going to happen, but I don't like interleague play. So I like the divisions. I like getting familiar with the other players in the division. I like being able to go to a Giants Diamondbacks game and knowing a lot of players on the Diamondbacks because I see them a lot, and getting rid of the. Yeah, I mean, divisions have been a part of baseball for so long. Getting rid of them would be kind of a shame, I think. So,
well,
yeah,
you could argue that you'd have the best teams in the playoffs, and that would be cool, but other than that, I think it hurts the game a little bit.
Here's the big point right now that you guys have to factor is that every time Major League Baseball does something, they'll never say, we messed up and go back and fix it.
Good point.
A lot of people, when they first started with the league championship series and starting with divisions, there was outrage amongst a lot of people saying, I thought, the best team in the league should go straight to the World Series. They shouldn't have to face another team that maybe isn't as good.
I think Selig won't admit it.
Right, but that wasn't Selig.
Only has to go
Selig
back to
didn't
that
even come into
All-Star
the
game.
90s. Okay,
That was 69.
This is
divisional play.
this is many different commissioners at the time. Every time Major League Baseball has made a change that's very significant, they've never backtracked. We talked about the wild card. If it were to happen and you said test it out, there's no such thing as a test it out with baseball. As soon as you try it, you're never going back. So you can't try it. You have to go with it. Yeah. And that's what makes this such a heated discussion, both of them that we've had, is that you don't want to make a mistake because it's not a mistake you're going to be able to change. Now, the way to solve this, to balance it, because a lot of the reason why they're arguing this is that some National League teams feel as if they're kind of getting an unfair treatment. Both leagues get 4 teams in the playoffs, but we have to face
Yes,
12 teams aren't in it in the National League, whereas 10 aren't in it in the AL. And that's where it kind of comes into play that, the National League teams feel a little, I guess you could say, unfairly challenged over the American League. And this is kind of where they either want to balance it. There's talk that baseball, with some teams that are in struggling markets, they could contract teams, like the NBA is really going to end up having to do in the lockout. Baseball's considering it because it would not only, they've considered it before, but, there's some markets where, finally Miami has a stadium, Minnesota has a stadium, and those were two hotbeds for contraction. Oh, yeah. And the two that you really would look at for contraction, you could look Oakland, potentially, and then the National League, there's some markets around that nobody knows which one would be the focal point, but there's some really intriguing stuff, whereas Tampa Bay's being considered for it, Seattle's been considered for it, even with the new stadium. Florida for a long time was thought to be the team that could get contracted. There's many ways that Major League Baseball can go with this, and if you do contract down to 28, you could have 2 divisions of 7 instead of having 3 divisions, and then top 2 teams and 2 wild card. It's just, again, what is the best way to do this?
Right. And well, let me ask you. We were talking about realignment because what I heard was that they were thinking of maybe moving the Astros, from the NL Central to the American League West. Now, that would be a great rivalry in Texas, by the way. But, the thing, I think, let me just say, that first of all, is it possible, that they would just do that, move the Astros and that's it, not make any other changes, and just move the Astros to the West?
Well, they'd have to change something because of the Interleague now.
Right.
Because you'd have 15-15.
Okay.
You would have to, something radical would have to be different.
Because just looking at the Astros and the divisions, I think they must be better. They'd be much better off in the American League West than in the National League Central. The Central is so competitive right now. You've got the Cardinals up there. You've got the Brewers. The Astros are way. It's going to take them a while to build back up.
Thomas, let's just put it this way.
Now, I think the Astros could beat the Mariners, so they wouldn't finish last.
Thomas, let's put it this way. I think it's going to take a long time for the Astros, no matter which division they play in, to build.
Okay, no, good.
They could bring back Lance Berkman and Craig Biggio and Jeff Bagwell and Roy Oswalt and.
I'm just saying they might be better off in the West, but you're right. That's a good point. But at the same time, you're saying contraction. To me, I hate to say it, but if I'm looking at a National League team, I'm looking at the Astros. To be honest, they've never made the World Series. They've stunk.
They have made the World Series. They made it in 2005, Thomas.
No, what? Okay, they haven't won it. You're right. They haven't won it. They've only made it once. They've stunk for the past 15 years.
Let's leave the contractions to pregnancy.
It's okay.
What?
Okay. but if unless you're considering expansion, they don't seem to like 30 teams anymore. Yeah. They don't like that because it leaves things unbalanced. Mm-hmm. So you either have to contract it down to 28 or expand to 32. Expanding is really tough right now because you dilute the amount of talent. Right. Because some teams would just be worse, and you'd have teams like the Astros having over 105 losses, it seems like every year. Yeah. Whereas if you contract, some of that talent could go to different teams. Now here's the thing is that you'd have to get really radical at this point because the teams that were rumored to be contracted ended up getting brand new stadiums. They're not going to contract in Miami now with that new stadium. You'd have to get radical with a team you're going to contract. And
it'd have to be the A's.
The A's are the team that really stick out.
Yeah.
And as bad as it sounds, the team right now that makes the most sense in the National League to get contracted are the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Never going to happen.
It's not going to happen, but it makes the most sense out of anything because they don't have ownership. They don't have a fan base right now that's supporting them. They don't have a competitive team up until when Matt Kemp decided I'm going to be a one-man show and nobody could stop him. They don't look.
In the Dodger Stadium area.
They're not making money. They're not making money. They're losing money. They have terrible ownership. They aren't getting attendance. They aren't putting out a successful team on the field. They're the team that if you took out history and just went by performance and annual base, they're the team that makes the most sense.
Right, but although you talk about them not having success on the field, you're right, the last few years, but they are building. They got a good offense. Kershaw is a good, even as a Giants fan, I'm saying this. Kershaw, Billingsley, they got the makes to be a good 1-2 punch if they add a couple more.
And even just a couple of years ago, they were in the playoffs. 2 or 3 years ago.
08-09, they reached the NLCS.
Yeah. Okay, that's enough Dodger talk.
Yeah.
So let's get back to our main point.
All right.
Realignment. I think it's a consensus no at the table, from what I can tell.
I would say so.
Not
Yeah.
into it.
I mean, if they're
Just
going
based off
to, yeah, the
every
way they
argument.
have to
I would
change
say
it
so.
up, yeah.
Since
It's-
the Giants are in the division they're in, I'm saying no. If they were in the AL West, I'd say yes.
Can you bring the Mariners into our division, maybe? We'll take the
Again,
Mariners.
it's,
What, the Mariners?
Oh, yeah, sure.
if they were to do this, though,
I don't.
I would say, as much as I'm going to get hated for saying this, if they were to realign like this, they would have to totally, I think, change it to a Western Conference, Eastern Conference like thing. Because that would be not only the...
In each league.
Right. No. Not even in each league.
Just two
You have two
conferences.
leagues.
Yeah.
You
Complete
National League and
Western,
American League.
Eastern.
You
So
totally
back to the
blow
old
it
way
up.
before divisions.
Not even that. You'd totally blow it up, make it NHL, NBA style. Because if we're talking radical, what's more radical than having the Giants, Dodgers, A's, Angels, and Padres, all the California teams in the same division?
Wow.
I mean, and having the
Yeah.
Yankees, Red Sox, Mets, Phillies, and Nationals all in the same area. That's, if you want to talk radical, that's more radical than having 15 and 15 because they're at the same level. But if you're going to do this, you really need to be able to change everything. That's basically what you're proposing with both of these, is that we're done with the system we have now. We want to change everything and just make us into, a league that's all money-based. Because as much as it is now, both of these are just showing, the realignment's more competitive balance-based, but it just looks so bad to me. And I think I can get an agreement amongst the entire table that just doesn't look good. And I don't think any of us want the wild card change either.
Baseball's thriving the way it is. Why change it too much?
So
Yeah, when it's necessary, then
Yes.
it's necessary, but I don't think it is.
So we really appreciate your time with us here today. For all the sports junkies, Thomas, John, Dave, Ben, I'm Alex. Thank you for joining us today and have a very nice day.